Strategos might look like a historical Total War title, but its gameplay and its real-time battle system in particular is so different that if you start playing it like a Total War game, you will quickly lose and not even know why you lost. So in this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to control armies and units in this amazing new game and win in battles. But since there is a campaign in this early access launch on Steam, I am also going to show you how to play on the campaign map and what you can expect from this game as development continues towards a full release. While the UI and controls of Strategos hide a lot of important gameplay elements, it is these three buttons on the top left side of the UI which, when activated, show you just how different the battle controls and gameplay of Strategos are compared to other games which offer similar tactical army battles in real time. So while I'm setting up this Roman army to go up against Carthaginians in Sicily for one of the battles in the campaign I will show you in the second part of this video, I'm going to click on the Command Range Overlay button. It is in blue because the overlay it enables is also in blue. What these blue circles represent is the shouting range of your general. Generals are marked by the laurel circle icon above their unit banner. These can be both infantry and mounted units, and you can have 1, 2 or even 3 general units in battles. This blue circle shows at what distance can your general shout orders on the battlefield, and units will obey these orders instantly. But what happens when a unit is outside the shouting range of a general unit is that you can no longer give it instant commands, but have to send the runners, couriers from the nearest general's unit, and only once that courier arrives will the unit obey the given order. Do note, however, that if a general's unit is engaged in combat, its command range shrinks so much that you can't give orders to almost any units. The blue circle practically disappears. This is probably one of the most realistic elements of battles in Strategos, which I very much like because it shows you, even while you have that camera that you're using to view the battlefield, that the generals in ancient times had very limited visibility of the battlefield and even less so if they became engaged themselves. Feel free to let me know in the comments if this is just a bit too real for you and would you be happier with a more arcade style like in Total War titles. And on the point of camera control, besides the regular WASD controls, you can use edge and mouse scrolling, which you can enable or disable in the options. But more importantly, if you zoom out to max level, you can get the tactical top-down camera with a simplified view of the battlefield. Just this system of command range changes the entire gameplay of what you might have been used to in similar games and forces you to set up armies with this command range in mind before even going into battle. But it becomes even more significant as you enter battles, as the command range, the blue circle, is also the range at which your own units benefit from the morale boost given to them by their general. This is represented by the red arrows going from the general's unit towards all other units. On top of this morale boost, units also gain a morale boost from other friendly units at their flanks. And I am mentioning morale in so much detail because this is a game based on morale victories achieved by tactical thinking and positioning. In Strategos, battles actually resolve very close to what happened on historical battlefields, where victory is achieved by the side which routs most enemy units. You will never get to a point where you are killing every last enemy soldier in a unit to destroy that unit. This is where the system of unit cohesion comes in. As a unit starts the battle, it is in the confident mode, with a general at its back and friendly units at its flanks. But as it gets hit by enemy range fire, as it gets charged by different types of enemies from the front, flank or rear, or a general dies, or it loses a melee engagement, or some other negative morale impact happens, it goes from confident down to shaken, shown by a yellow flag. If its morale keeps getting reduced, it will go down to wavering, shown by a black flag, and lastly, if it becomes broken, it turns into the routed state, shown by the white flashing flag. It is possible for a unit to reform and go back from a routed state into a wavering cohesion state, but it has to be inside the general's command range to do so and become rallied. Its morale can be restored while standing in the general's command range, and it can climb up from lower cohesion states into higher ones as the morale bar fills up. Depending on a unit's veterancy status, it will auto-break, meaning losing all morale when faced with mid-battle situations, like allies around it routing or generals falling in battle. The higher the unit's veterancy status, the thresholds for such auto-breaks due to morale shocks are lower, so while a fresh, raw new unit will auto-break if it drops below 60% morale, a veteran unit will only do so if it goes under 40% morale. These cohesion tests and unit combats are actually calculated by a system of dice rolls, so almost like a tabletop game with discrete states and different modifiers and percentage-based success rates. Kind of a real-time D&D game. You can see these happening on the unit's cards right on the battlefield when you hover over units or when you have a friendly unit selected and hover your mouse over an enemy unit. But if you open one of the menus on the top right corner of the screen, you can actually read the full reports on all the past cohesion tests between units and their engagements. Here you can learn why a charge failed or why a unit broke and what contributed to it happening. This is where you can learn in detail about a unit's combat advantage points distribution, which it had at the moment of combat. These combat advantage points are gained or lost in many different ways, and here too, even if two units have the same amount of points, they still go through a dice roll to see which one wins. One of the most important elements of the system to remember is the state in which units can be. If they are steady, they have far more of a chance to win an engagement, while they can become unsteady for several different reasons. For example, if a unit has already fallen below max cohesion into shaken status, it will not be steady. Another example is if a unit's formation is being disturbed by another unit going through it. It will become hindered, and the same will happen if it is going through a thick forest or being attacked by elephants, meaning it becomes unsteady. This system of combat advantage points also heavily relies on the differences between units' armor and weapons. Since there are light and heavy units, but also javelins, short and long spears, pikes, lances, bows and other types of weapons, their interactions also reduce or increase a unit's advantage points, and go into the calculations for unit engagements. You should keep in mind that light units don't automatically give large flanking morale debuffs to enemies, because light units attacking into heavy units usually results in those light units taking higher casualties. Now, to avoid some of the problems from units going outside the general's shouting range and having to use couriers, you can use unit orders which include waypoints by holding the control key. Once the courier gets to such a unit, it will follow all those waypoints it received. You can hold Ctrl plus Alt key to see all your waypoints in action. Now, since the control key is taken for waypoints, putting units into groups is done by using the shift key. Interestingly enough, you can't move units in formation while in the deployment mode before battle, but you can move units in formation and even rotate those formations once the battle starts. This is done with a combination of the Alt and right click, while the mouse wheel changes the army's orientation. If you need to give a melee attack order to a ranged unit, for example, when they are low on ammo, this is also done with a combination of Alt and right click commands. And mentioning ranged units, this is what the third yellow UI button at the left side is for, to show you the range at which your bows or javelin units can attack at. These ranged units can bait enemies into attack if they hit hard enough or if a unit is especially primed to be baited by the stats, like for example elephant units. Use this to your advantage to pull enemies into fights they will lose against superior friendly units. The middle red button is for charge range. This is something all units have, and it is the range at which they might choose to charge enemies themselves, even if you don't give them the order to do so. One thing you can give them the order to do, and it is in the bottom left corner, is to go into pushback or fallback modes when in melee combat. What this allows for is that when two units fight, they choose what to do after a combat engagement between them is solved. Pushing back means they try to force enemies to take a step back and not give ground, while fallback means they do give ground and make room in between them. If you alternate these options, you can end up creating gaps in between units on the front, which can be used by second line units or even generals to attack exposed flanks. When it comes to light skirmish units or light cavalry skirmish units or cavalry in general, they have what is called a recoil mode, meaning that they will avoid combat that is not beneficial to them. Skirmishers will get out of the way of enemy infantry and cavalry, while cavalry units will not ride into tight formation of spears. They will actively recoil in this mode and stay away from enemy units. The problem is that often, by doing so, units will run out of your general's shouting range. Now I need to give you a few pointers on how the campaign map and campaign gameplay works. When you first start a campaign on the island of Sicily during the First Punic War between Rome and Carthage, you and your opponent only control a few settlements and have no armies on the map. Each free settlement has a certain rating, but also its starting disposition towards Rome or Carthage. Different icons show you location of ports and walled settlements and which factions control which settlement. Through diplomacy, you can extend that control, and while you can play step by step from your own starting position, I chose to do something very different and start right at my enemy's doorstep. Again, as with combat, diplomacy gameplay also depends on dice rolls. Rolling 8, 9 or 10 allows you to shift loyalties of a settlement, and I was lucky enough to manage to do so. But Carthage did the same to a neighboring settlement, and with a roll of 13, showing you their effects from generals and factions, which can boost a roll after it is played. Now, after a few rolls with diplomacy comes the planning phase for future conquest with army generation. You can sort a list of units to choose which units are a priority for you on the battlefield. Once this army is ready, you choose where to place it on the map, and can only do so in provinces that you own. This is why me owning a province so close to my enemy was both a benefit and a risk. With two armies deployed, the next phase lets you choose between marching armies, using diplomacy once again, or your fleet, or starting a siege if your army is in a position to do so. I chose to march on an enemy settlement and dragged one of my armies on the map over it. This requires a roll too, and I lucked out because of several positive traits you can see displayed here, despite poor road quality. A roll of 9 or 10 would have allowed my army to keep moving, but with a roll of 7 I can only get to that settlement and end the turn. Since Carthage also moved its army to this settlement, we can start a battle which is preceded by calling in allies from neighboring settlements, and this is the last possible moment for a retreat. After rolls are done for reinforcements from connected settlements, the battle can begin. This one I won, but it doesn't automatically give me rule of the settlement. Now, when it comes to future new content for the game, you can take a look at this development roadmap posted by the devs with short, mid and long-term goals, which include both small features and upgrades, but also new content in the form of more units, chariots in particular, as well as slingers and warbands, in addition to new map-based campaigns like the one I showed you. This is a very ambitious game from a small indie studio which found a mid-sized publisher, so don't expect too much from them right out of the gates. For me, the game offers a very different experience to any similar previously made game in the historical context and with army-sized tactical battles. The campaign gameplay might not be full of amazing features, and the dice rolls might put some of you off, but I hope you will give it a chance, especially if a demo version becomes available again. If you would like to see and learn more about this game, let me know and I will continue making videos about it. If you have already started playing it, let me know about your experiences and impressions so far in the comments below, while you can learn about other new and upcoming strategy games by using the cards on the screen or links in the description. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!